There is a signal within you that moves before thought, before intention, before any attempt to shape reality. It does not announce itself with noise or urgency. It does not ask for permission. It simply radiates. This silent frequency is the true beginning of every manifestation you have ever experienced, even the ones you believed were accidents. You are broadcasting long before you are speaking, choosing, or planning. And the field is responding long before you are aware of what you are asking for. This signal is not created through effort. It is not formed by techniques or practices. It is the natural emanation of your current state of being. The universe responds to this state effortlessly because the field recognizes vibration, not words. It reads your inner coherence, not your outer declarations. This is why actions that are misaligned feel heavy, and why attempts to force outcomes create friction. The signal does not lie. It shows the truth of what you are being in this moment. As you become aware of this frequency, you begin to understand that manifestation is not something you perform. It is something you allow. The field is always listening, always reflecting, always calibrating to your inner condition. When you feel contraction, the signal becomes fragmented, unclear, distorted. When you feel expansion, the signal becomes strong, clean, unmistakable, and reality shifts accordingly. You are not trying to command creation. You are learning to understand what you are already transmitting. The silent signal is shaped by your emotional stance, your identity, and the stories you hold about what is possible. But at its core, it is shaped most directly by your level of presence. When you are scattered, the signal weakens. When you are centered, the signal sharpens. Presence is the amplifier because presence removes resistance. It brings you back into the simplicity of being, where your frequency is no longer split between desire and doubt, between vision and fear. In presence, the signal aligns itself without your intervention. You may think you need to speak more clearly, visualize more intensely, or plan more precisely, but none of that carries the influence you imagine. What governs manifestation is the quiet resonance underneath all of those actions. The field moves with the truth of your vibration, not the performance of your intention. When you recognize this, you stop trying to convince reality of anything. You begin instead to understand yourself as the origin point of everything you experience. This recognition is the beginning of mastery, not control but awareness, not effort but attunement. You do not push reality from the outside, you harmonize with it from within. And as you refine this inner signal, you discover that reality is not resisting you. It is mirroring you with absolute precision. Every moment becomes a reflection of your internal broadcast. The silent signal is not hidden from you. It is simply quiet, subtle, foundational. When you learn to feel it, you learn to shape reality without force. You learn to shift timelines without strain, because the signal was always the true cause, and you were always the one transmitting it. Reality does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. This is the truth most people overlook because they are focused on desire as if desire has power on its own. But desire without identity is an empty broadcast. The field cannot move toward your words if your state contradicts them. It listens only to the frequency you hold. It listens only to the being behind the wanting. You may say you want peace while carrying tension in your body. You may say you want abundance while radiating fear of loss. You may say you want love while holding a frequency of unworthiness. The words do not matter. The intentions, as you think of them, do not matter. The field reads the vibration beneath the language. It responds with absolute neutrality to the signal you embody, not the story you prefer. This is why desire alone feels insufficient, because it is. Identity is the true driver, not the surface identity you describe with labels, but the internal stance you occupy without thinking. The quiet assumption of who you believe yourself to be. That assumption generates your signal. That signal shapes your timeline. Change the assumption and the field rearranges itself, not because you demanded change, but because you shifted into a different frequency of being. The field does not resist this. It reflects it instantly. To understand this is to understand why effort so often leads to frustration. When you try to achieve from a state of lack, you amplify the lack. When you try to attract from a state of unworthiness, you strengthen the unworthiness. Your actions cannot override your state. Your desires cannot cancel your frequency. The field is consistent, exact, unfailingly responsive to the truth you are embodying right now. Identity leads, reality follows. And this brings you to the simplest and most profound realization. You do not need to convince the universe of anything. You need only become the version of you for whom the desired reality is natural. When the identity shifts, the field adjusts without strain. Creation unfolds without force. You do not chase outcomes because outcomes recalibrate around your being. You become the gravitational center, and the timeline forms around you. This is not about pretending. Pretending is still scarcity wearing a mask. This is about recognition. You recognize the identity that already matches the reality you seek. You feel its frequency. You allow it. You let it become familiar. And as it settles into your emotional body, the field translates it into form. You are not trying to change reality. You are changing the broadcaster. When you understand that identity is the true language of the quantum field, you stop negotiating with desire. You stop struggling for validation through outer shifts. You begin to refine the inner stance that all outer shifts depend on. This is the law. Reality cannot contradict the identity you embody. And as you become more conscious of this, you step into the quiet power that has always been yours. The power to shape timelines by being, not by asking. Emotion is not a reaction. Emotion is a transmission. Long before the mind interprets an experience, the emotional body has already issued its instruction to the field. This instruction is not verbal and not conceptual. It is vibrational. It tells the field with precision what reality you are available for. When you begin to understand emotion as frequency, you also understand why your inner atmosphere matters far more than any external effort. The field does not follow thought. It follows tone. Every emotion you feel is a signal of expansion or contraction. Expansion is alignment. Contraction is misalignment. Expansion opens timelines. Contraction narrows them. Expansion says yes to possibilities. Contraction filters them out. This is not about labeling emotions as good or bad. It is about recognizing the vibrational instruction each one carries. When you feel open, relaxed, grounded, the field receives a clear transmission. When you feel tense, resistant, or threatened, the signal becomes fragmented and the field reflects that fragmentation back to you. You are not being punished for contraction. You are simply being mirrored. The mirror has no judgment. It only reflects the frequency it receives. When you feel a surge of fear or doubt, you are not failing. You are receiving guidance about the frequency you are currently broadcasting. This is why emotion is such a powerful teacher. It shows you, instantly, whether your vibration is aligned with the reality you intend to inhabit. It gives you a direct view into the signal you are sending before that signal crystallizes into form. To shift the emotional frequency is not to suppress anything. Suppression creates more contraction. The shift occurs through recognition and allowing. When you allow the emotion without clinging to the story that produced it, the energy moves. It unclenches. It becomes fluid again. And in that fluidity, expansion returns. The field responds immediately to this softening because the field is always reading the present signal, not the past momentum. You do not need to fight your way into alignment. You only need to stop resisting the emotion long enough to let it settle into clarity. As you tune into this understanding, something subtle begins to shift. You no longer chase emotions that feel good, nor reject emotions that feel heavy. You begin instead to recognize each emotion as an instruction being written into your timeline. You see contraction as a message pointing you back toward alignment. You see expansion as confirmation that you are choosing from your higher identity. Emotion becomes the compass, guiding you through the subtle landscape of vibrational creation. And here, at this point of recognition, you can declare your alignment. If you feel the resonance of this teaching, acknowledge it. Use the simple act of liking this moment as a declaration. I amplify this frequency, not to support a platform, but to anchor yourself deeper in the signal you are choosing. Let the action be a reflection of the expansion you feel. When you understand emotion as frequency and frequency as instruction, you begin to realize that manifestation has never been about effort. It has always been about resonance. The field listens to your emotional truth, and when that truth becomes coherent, reality cannot help but shift in response. There is a moment when the field recognizes you, and it is not the moment you push, strive, or attempt to command reality. It is the moment when what you feel, what you believe, and what you desire fall into alignment without strain. This is coherence. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It arrives quietly, like a frequency snapping into place. And when it does, reality begins to reorganize around you with an ease that effort could never produce. Coherence is the natural state of your being when you stop fragmenting your signal. Most people live with one frequency in their desires, another in their emotions, and another in their beliefs. The field cannot mirror a divided broadcast. It reflects the dominant vibration, which is often the one rooted in doubt, fear, or old identity. This is why attempts to force outcomes feel heavy. The signal is split, and the field is responding accurately to the confusion. To enter coherence, you do not need to perfect the mind or control the body. You need only return to the inner stance where desire and belief no longer contradict each other. This is not manufactured confidence. It is recognition. You recognize that the reality you seek is not external to you. You recognize that the frequency of that reality already exists within your emotional field. And in that recognition, the desire stops being a longing for what is missing. It becomes a natural expression of who you are becoming. When coherence occurs, there is a distinct sensation of clarity, not the clarity of thought, but the clarity of presence. The internal resistance drops away. The contracting emotions soften. The belief that once felt distant becomes obvious, even self-evident. You are no longer trying to bridge a gap. The gap dissolves because the vibration you hold now matches the vibration of what you previously considered future. The field responds immediately because it finally has a unified signal to mirror. This shift cannot be faked. It cannot be forced. Any attempt to force coherence is itself incoherence. The mind may attempt to rehearse new beliefs, but if the emotional body is tense and the identity remains unchanged, the field reads the tension, not the repetition. Coherence emerges when you allow your internal state to settle into authenticity. You stop trying to convince yourself and instead feel into the version of you that needs no convincing. This is the moment the field recognizes. In coherence, manifestation stops feeling like a pursuit and becomes a natural unfolding. There is no grasping, no urgency, no attempt to accelerate the process. You are aligned, and alignment has its own momentum. You can sense the shift because your inner world becomes quiet, not empty but spacious, not passive but receptive. The field meets you here because this is the frequency of creation itself, still, clear, coherent. When you experience this moment, you understand why effort was never the path. Coherence reveals that reality responds to resonance, not force. And as you become more familiar with this inner alignment, you begin to trust the simplicity of it. The field has always been listening. It is only now that it can finally respond to you with precision. Forcing comes from the belief that reality is separate from you, that you must push against it to make it yield. But forcing is built on contraction, and contraction sends a frequency of resistance into the field. The field does not judge this frequency, it simply reflects it. When you force, you transmit the vibration of struggle, and the field mirrors that struggle back as delay, friction, or stagnation. This is why effort without alignment feels heavy. The weight is not in the action, it is in the frequency beneath the action. Forcing assumes lack. It assumes the desired reality is distant and must be pulled closer. But that assumption shapes the broadcast. The field recognizes lack, not desire. It hears the contraction behind the push. The more intensely you try to make something happen, the more your vibration declares that it is not happening. The field responds faithfully to this unspoken instruction. It reflects the inner tension because tension is the actual frequency being sent. This is the simple and subtle truth. Forcing repels because forcing divides you from the very reality you are trying to reach. Allowing operates from a completely different frequency. Allowing is not passive, it is receptive, open, attuned. It recognizes that the timeline you seek is not outside your grasp. It is already available. Allowing means your internal state stops contradicting your desire. The act of allowing dissolves the resistance that was blocking coherence. In that openness, your frequency stabilizes. It becomes magnetic, not because you are drawing things in, but because you are no longer pushing them away with tension. Allowing is spacious. It is the state in which your emotional body relaxes and your identity aligns with what you prefer. In this state, the field feels your clarity. It senses a signal that is not split between wanting and doubting. When you allow, your vibration becomes clean. Clean vibrations move quickly. They reorganize the field without effort. You are not trying to influence reality. You are standing in harmony with the version of reality that matches your frequency. The alignment itself becomes the magnetism. People often misunderstand allowing as doing nothing. But allowing is not about inactivity. It is about removing interference. The interference was the struggle, the grasping, the attempt to override your own emotional guidance. When you drop the interference, the natural flow resumes. You feel the shift immediately. The mind softens, the body loosens, the breath deepens. These are signs that you have returned to resonance. And resonance is what the field responds to every time. The paradox is that trying harder often weakens your signal, while letting go strengthens it. Not because effort is wrong, but because effort from a place of fear carries a frequency that repels. Allowing opens the channel for coherence to move through you. You align with the field instead of fighting it. And when the alignment is present, reality reorganizes without resistance. This is the law. Forcing fractures the signal. Allowing unifies it. And a unified signal is irresistible to the field. Contrast is not the obstacle you imagine it to be. It is the sculptor of your timelines. Every unwanted moment, every tension, every discomfort is refining the frequency you carry, not by punishing you, but by sharpening your clarity. Contrast reveals what is out of resonance with your true identity. It shows you with precision the vibration you no longer wish to hold. In doing so, it points you toward the timeline that matches who you are becoming. Most people interpret contrast as failure or misalignment. They assume that an unwanted experience means the field is unresponsive or that their inner work is ineffective. But contrast is not a sign of misalignment. It is the process through which alignment becomes unmistakably defined. Without contrast, desire would remain vague. The vibrational signal would be soft, unanchored, indistinct. Contrast brings definition. It shows you the edges of your preference, so you can feel your way into coherence with greater accuracy. When something feels wrong, it is not because the universe is withholding. It is because your frequency is making a quiet declaration. Not this. And that declaration is powerful. It pushes you toward resonance by revealing the places where your current signal does not match your true expansion. The field listens to this declaration just as clearly as it listens to your desires. Every moment of contrast is a message to the field that your signal is refining, that you are selecting with greater intentionality. Contrast is participation in creation, not interruption. As you begin to understand this, the emotional charge around unwanted experiences softens. You stop fighting contrast and start reading it. You recognize that each uncomfortable moment carries information. It shows you what beliefs are outdated, what identities are too small, what frequencies you are ready to release. Contrast becomes guidance, not punishment. It becomes a mirror showing you the next evolution of your timeline. This shift in perception alone changes the way your field organizes itself. When contrast sharpens your desire, that desire becomes clearer not only to your mind, but to your vibration. The field reads this clarity. It feels the coherence emerging as you release the old resonance and step into a new one. The more refined the desire, the more precise the broadcast. And the more precise the broadcast, the faster the timeline shifts. This is why major transitions in life are often preceded by periods of discomfort. The discomfort is the sculpting. It is the refinement process that allows a new timeline to come into view. In this way, contrast is essential. Without it, your frequency would remain static. There would be no expansion, no recalibration, no shift. The unwanted moments do not delay your path. They carve it. They shape the vibrational architecture of your next reality. When you meet contrast with recognition instead of resistance, you accelerate the alignment. You move more effortlessly into the version of yourself that resonates with the future you have already selected. Contrast is the chisel shaping your frequency. It brings definition to your desire, clarity to your identity, and momentum to your timeline. When you allow it to guide rather than discourage you, you discover that every moment of discomfort was always refining your path with exquisite precision. Creation happens only in the present moment, not because the future is inaccessible, but because the future is shaped entirely by the vibration you hold now. The mind loves to project forward, imagining outcomes, rehearsing possibilities, gripping tightly to visions that feel distant. But the field does not respond to imagined futures. It responds only to the frequency being broadcast in this moment. The present is the only point where your signal is active, coherent, and capable of shifting timelines. When you think about the future, you are not creating. You are remembering. Even your most elaborate fantasies are built from past impressions, beliefs, and emotional patterns. They carry old frequencies. They cannot generate new realities because they are rooted in what you already know. Timeline selection requires a different posture, one that is available only here, in the immediacy of presence. In presence, your signal is no longer tangled in old momentum. It becomes clean, receptive, and potent. The present moment is not a location in time. It is a state of consciousness. It is the place where resistance dissolves, where emotion reveals its true tone, where identity speaks clearly. When you are fully present, you can feel the frequency you are actually broadcasting. Without presence, you are reacting to echoes of the past or projections of the future. Both distort the signal. Both create noise in the field. Only presence brings coherence, and coherence is what selects timelines. The mind resists this simplicity. It wants control, prediction, certainty. It tries to create from planning and strategy. But plans are secondary reflections. They cannot move the field unless they emerge from an aligned state. When your mind attempts to create without presence, the vibration becomes split. one part striving forward, another part anchored in fear or doubt. The field feels the split and reflects it as stagnation. This is not failure, it is precision. The field will not materialize a timeline you are not currently aligned with. When you drop into the now, something profound happens. The emotional body stabilizes, the noise of mental projection quiets. You feel yourself as the origin point of your experience, not a character reacting to external events. In that recognition, your frequency becomes intentional. You can sense which emotions expand you and which contract you. You can feel the identity you are choosing. And because the field responds instantly to these subtle shifts, you begin to see how quickly reality adjusts when the signal is clean. Presence is not passive. It is active participation in the subtle architecture of creation. In presence, you are not waiting for the future. You are selecting the frequency that determines which future becomes accessible. You are not trying to reach a timeline. You are becoming the version of yourself who naturally inhabits it. This happens only now, not in the imagined tomorrow, not in the remembered past, only here. When you understand this, you stop trying to create from abstraction. You bring your attention back to the still point where your frequency is broadcasting. You refine it gently, consciously, with awareness. And the moment you do, the field responds. Because creation has always been happening now. The present moment is not just where you live, it is where reality rearranges itself around you. Identity is the frequency that shapes the architecture of your reality, not the identity you describe in language, but the one you hold as an unspoken truth beneath every thought and emotion. This inner identity broadcasts constantly, forming the vibrational framework through which all experiences are selected. You do not attract what you want. You attract what your identity makes possible. The field organizes itself around the version of you that you consistently inhabit, whether consciously or unconsciously. Your identity is not a static concept. It is a living frequency. It is the tone you carry when you are not trying to be anything at all. The assumptions you hold about yourself, the expectations you feel regarding your life, the emotional baseline you return to, these are the signals the field responds to. This is why shifting your identity reshapes your timeline with far greater precision than shifting your desires. The desire may point toward a future, but identity determines whether that future is available to you. When you embody an identity aligned with expansion, the field mirrors that expansion in the form of opportunities, synchronicities, and pathways that feel effortless. When you occupy an identity rooted in limitation, the field reflects that limitation with equal accuracy. It is never personal, it is purely vibrational. The field does not interpret, it calibrates. It does not evaluate, it reflects. This is the profound neutrality of creation. Reality is built from the frequency you hold, not the future you imagine. Changing identity does not require force. It requires recognition. You become aware of the version of yourself that is already congruent with the reality you desire. You feel its emotional tone. You sense the spaciousness it carries. You allow that frequency to settle into your present moment awareness. As you do, the old identity begins to dissolve, not through conflict, but through lack of resonance. You cannot cling to an outdated frequency while simultaneously inhabiting the one that aligns with your expansion. One naturally overtakes the other. Identity is not affirmed through repetition alone. It is affirmed through embodiment. You feel the new stance in your body. You breathe as the version of yourself who no longer doubts. You respond to experiences from a place of inner coherence. And as this internal shift stabilizes, the field begins to organize a new timeline around you. Outer changes follow inner certainty. This is the law, consistent and unerring. And if you feel the resonance of this truth, let that recognition be met with commitment. not to an action, but to a frequency. Use the act of subscribing not as a mechanical gesture, but as a quiet declaration. I remain within this frequency. You are not supporting content, you are anchoring identity. You are choosing to stay aligned with the version of yourself who understands this level of creation. When identity shifts, reality follows without hesitation. The world rearranges itself around the tone you emit. You are not waiting for life to validate who you are becoming. You are allowing who you are becoming to generate the life that matches it. This is the true role of identity. It is the tuning fork that sets the field into motion, and as you stabilize in this deeper sense of self, timelines open that were never accessible from the old frequency. The small self is the part of you that believes it must manage reality, control outcomes, and push against circumstances to create change. It lives in tension because it assumes separation. It assumes the field is external and must be influenced through force, strategy, or constant vigilance. But this small self is not the one that creates. It is the one that reacts. Its movements generate resistance because its foundation is fear. Fear of losing control, fear of not having enough, fear of being unsupported by life itself. To access the field, you must release the small self, not by suppressing it, but by seeing it clearly. The small self is built from old memory, old protection, old identity. It carries momentum from timelines you no longer inhabit. It tries to move reality through effort because it cannot feel the power that is already flowing beneath it. When you identify with the small self, you broadcast contraction. You transmit a frequency of separation, and the field, always precise, mirrors that separation back into your experience. Releasing the small self is not an act of abandonment. It is an act of recognition. You recognize that the consciousness observing the small self is not limited, not threatened, not bound to old patterns. That observing consciousness is the source. It is the field in localized form. When you shift your identification from the reactive pattern to the awareness witnessing it, the contraction loosens. The emotional pressure dissolves. You begin to sense the spaciousness underneath every experience. In that spaciousness, the true signal emerges. The small self demands. The deeper self allows. The small self resists what is. The deeper self recognizes what is and moves with it. The small self tries to bend the field to its will. The deeper self knows it is the field. The moment you release the grip of effortful will, you step into alignment with the creative force that has always been functioning through you. You move from pushing reality to participating in it. This shift is subtle. It does not announce itself with intensity. It appears as a softening of the breath, of the mind, of the emotional body. It appears as clarity without tension, desire without grasping, intention without urgency. You begin to feel that you are being carried, not carried away from responsibility, but carried into coherence. This is the frequency of the larger self, the self that does not need to force outcomes because it recognizes its unity with the field that produces them. When the small self dissolves, timelines open effortlessly. You no longer try to manipulate circumstances. You align with the version of yourself who naturally experiences the reality you seek. You listen to the emotional guidance that rises from the deeper self. You follow expansion. You release contraction. This is not passivity. It is mastery. You are no longer attempting to control the world from the outside. You are shaping it from the inside through the frequency of the consciousness that witnesses everything without becoming entangled in it. Releasing the small self is stepping into your true creative position. It is remembering that the field responds to your state of being, not your effort. And when you inhabit the larger self, the field recognizes you instantly. Quantum attraction is not a process of acquiring something that does not yet exist. It is the recognition that all realities already exist as vibrational potentials, and your frequency determines which one you experience. Nothing is created in the way you imagine. Instead, you shift into the timeline that matches the signal you broadcast. Manifestation is not accumulation. It is selection. It is resonance. And resonance requires no pursuit, only alignment. When you believe you must chase a desire, you imply that the desired reality is separate from you. That belief generates distance. The field reflects that distance with experiences that feel out of reach. But when you understand that your desired timeline already exists as a stable vibration, you stop trying to pull it toward you. You begin instead to adjust your frequency to the version of you who naturally inhabits that timeline. This adjustment is subtle. It takes place in your emotional stance, your identity, and your moment-to-moment presence. Choosing a timeline is not a mental exercise. You cannot think your way into resonance. You feel your way into it. The emotional body knows the frequency long before the mind does. When you tune into the feeling of the timeline you prefer, you create an inner coherence that begins drawing your attention, choices, and experiences into alignment. Nothing external has to be forced. The field rearranges itself according to your inner tone. This is why desire alone is insufficient. Desire points toward a timeline, but your frequency determines whether you enter it. The reality that matches your desire is already formed. It does not need to be built, summoned, or constructed. It needs to be selected, and you select it by becoming emotionally compatible with it. The more you feel the state of being associated with that timeline, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, it feels less like a future you are reaching for and more like a present you are remembering. This is the moment resonance begins to stabilize. You feel a subtle shift in certainty, not intellectual certainty, but vibrational certainty. The identity that aligns with your chosen timeline becomes familiar. You no longer oscillate between wanting and doubting. You stop rehearsing the old emotional patterns that belong to a previous version of you. Your signal sharpens, and when the signal sharpens, the field responds with precision. Quantum attraction is selection, not pursuit. Pursuit implies effort, scarcity, and distance. Selection implies alignment, clarity, and presence. When you operate from selection, you do not ask when the manifestation will arrive. You understand that the timeline is already active, and you are in the process of merging with it. The outer world then begins to reflect your internal shift through synchronicities, new opportunities, and subtle reorganizations that guide you forward. The field does not require you to build a new reality. It requires you to tune to the frequency of the reality that already exists. And when that tuning becomes consistent, you cross the threshold without force. You find yourself living the timeline you once imagined, not because you pulled it toward you, but because you rose into resonance with it. This is the essence of quantum attraction. You align, you select, and reality responds. Timeline divergence does not occur through dramatic choices or sudden external events. It happens through subtle shifts in your emotional stance, repeated consistently enough to generate a new vibrational trajectory. Every moment, you are broadcasting a frequency. Every broadcast is a selection, and each selection either reinforces your current timeline or begins to open you into another. Divergence is not an abrupt fork. It is an accumulation of small vibrational decisions that eventually separate one path from another in profound ways. Your emotional stance is the earliest indicator of which timeline you are aligning with. A single moment of contraction does not alter your path, but the pattern of contraction does. A single moment of expansion does not transform your life, but a stabilized state of expansion does. The field reads patterns, not isolated moments. It mirrors the frequency you return to again and again, because that frequency is the most honest expression of your identity. And identity is what determines your timeline. Imagine two emotional stances, one infused with openness, the other infused with fear. In the short term, the difference between them seems small. Both may lead you to take similar actions or make similar choices, but over time, the vibrational distinction widens. Opportunities that resonate with openness begin to appear for the first identity, while opportunities that resonate with fear begin to appear for the second. Each response to these opportunities then reinforces the emotional stance that attracted them. The divergence accelerates. What began as a subtle difference becomes a completely different reality. This is the mechanics of timeline separation. Small vibrational shifts create exponential changes in trajectory. You do not leap from one timeline to another. You slide seamlessly based on the frequency you maintain. When you begin to shift emotionally, you may not see immediate external evidence. This is because the field is recalibrating subtle structures first: your intuition, your perception, your internal cues. These reorganizations happen beneath the surface long before they appear as events. By the time the physical timeline becomes obvious, the vibrational trajectory was already well established. This is why inner work matters so deeply. A small shift in emotional truth today becomes a radically different life months or years from now. When you choose expansion over contraction, again and again, you reinforce a signal that aligns with a more coherent timeline. When you choose contraction, you reinforce a signal that aligns with limitation. Neither choice is judged. Both are simply mirrored. The field is exact. It takes your emotional stance as instruction. Timeline divergence becomes particularly noticeable when your identity begins to evolve. As you release old emotional patterns and stabilize new ones, you no longer match the frequency of the timeline you once occupied. People, situations, and possibilities that were once familiar begin to fall away. New alignments appear. This is not chaos. It is recalibration. You are stepping into a vibrational structure that could not reveal itself until you shifted emotionally. When you master the mechanics of emotional stance, you master the mechanics of timeline selection. You no longer interpret your life as random or externally controlled. You see the direct link between your inner frequency and the direction your timeline takes. And as you refine your emotional broadcast, you begin to consciously shape the divergence, not through force, but through resonance. This is the quiet power behind all timeline shifts, the subtle emotional decisions that accumulate into entirely new realities. Synchronicity is not luck, chance, or coincidence. It is the field reflecting your coherence with exquisite precision. When your inner state aligns with your desired timeline, the external world begins to echo that alignment through patterns, signs, and seemingly orchestrated moments. These events feel meaningful because they are. They are the vibrational markers that show your frequency has stabilized enough for reality to rearrange around it. Synchronicity appears when your signal becomes clear, not perfect, not forceful, simply coherent. When your emotional stance, identity, and intention stop contradicting each other, the field responds by placing you in the path of resonance. The right insight shows up at the right time. The right connection appears without effort. A message, a symbol, a number, a phrase repeats itself across contexts. These are not external validations. They are reflections of your inner clarity. The frequency behind synchronicity is coherence. Coherence creates an energetic ripple that organizes matter and events in ways your logical mind could never calculate. You are not attracting these occurrences as rewards. You are meeting them because you and they share the same vibration. Synchronicity is simply the outer expression of inner harmony. When coherence deepens, synchronicity becomes more frequent, more precise, and more unmistakable. Many people search for signs, hoping they will guide them. But true synchronicity does not arise from searching. It arises from alignment. You do not chase signs. You emit a frequency that calls them into visibility. The moment you begin looking desperately for synchronicity, you shift into contraction and the signal becomes distorted. Synchronicity is not the path to alignment. Alignment is the path to synchronicity. When a synchronicity appears, it is not telling you what to do. It is showing you who you are being. It reflects the vibrational stance you are currently holding. If the signs feel expansive, it is because your frequency is expanding. If they feel sharp or jarring, they may be pointing to a contraction you have not yet addressed. In either case, the field is responding with precision, offering reflection rather than instruction. This is why the most powerful way to engage with synchronicity is through recognition. Recognition amplifies coherence. When you acknowledge a synchronicity, not with excitement but with presence, you strengthen the vibrational alignment that created it. You stabilize the signal, you deepen the resonance, and the field responds by offering more reflections, each one an affirmation of the frequency you are embodying. If what you are hearing now resonates, let the recognition be expressed. Use the act of commenting not as a social gesture, but as an energetic declaration. I see the reflection. I recognize the alignment. I anchor this frequency. Your words are not feedback. They are a continuation of the signal you are transmitting. Synchronicity is the universe speaking in the language of alignment. It is the mirror showing you that your inner state is no longer scattered, that your signal is being received clearly, that your timeline is unfolding in response to your coherence. When you learn to read these reflections without grasping or resisting, you begin to navigate your reality with a deeper sense of trust. You stop asking whether you are on the right path. You feel the resonance. You witness the reflections. And you understand that synchronicity is not the destination. It is the confirmation that your frequency is already shaping the path beneath your feet. Stability is not intensity. Stability is quiet consistency, the gentle maintaining of a frequency without gripping it or attempting to hold it in place. When you shift into a new vibration, the impulse is often to protect it, to cling to it, to make sure it does not slip away. But this tension introduces contraction, and contraction distorts the very signal you are trying to sustain. The new frequency does not require force. It requires recognition, steady, calm, unambitious recognition. A stable signal arises when you stop treating alignment as something fragile. Alignment is natural. It is the resting state of your being when interference falls away. What threatens stability is not external circumstance. It is your own return to old emotional patterns. The old identity has momentum, and that momentum can feel familiar. But familiarity is not truth. Stability comes from choosing, again and again, the current that expands you rather than the one that contracts you. Holding the new signal does not mean monitoring your thoughts or policing your emotions. These efforts imply fear, the fear that the frequency is temporary or easily lost. But the vibration you are choosing is not a performance. It is not something you must defend. It is something you remember. Every time you notice yourself slipping into an old emotional stance, you do not correct yourself through pressure. You simply recognize the contraction and soften. Recognition is what returns you to alignment. Pressure only deepens the contraction. The field responds instantly to your emotional truth. If your truth is grounded, open, spacious, the frequency holds itself. If your truth becomes tense, desperate, or guarded, the frequency fragments. But fragmentation is not failure. It is information. It shows you exactly where the old identity still tries to lead. Stability emerges when you allow this information without reacting against it. You become the witness to your internal shifts, not the enforcer. In witnessing, the emotional body relaxes. And in that relaxation, the new signal strengthens. The key to sustaining a new vibration is not focus, it is ease. When the new frequency feels natural, you no longer think about maintaining it. You simply inhabit it. This is why calm is so powerful. Calm is not the absence of intensity, it is the absence of contradiction. In calm, your signal becomes consistent because nothing is pulling it apart. Your desires, emotions, and identity begin to move together. The field feels this coherence and mirrors it faithfully. Stability is a form of trust. You trust that the new vibration does not need to be enforced. You trust that the field responds to who you are, not how tightly you hold your alignment. You trust that the momentum of the new timeline will build as you continue to choose the emotional stance that expands you. Trust relaxes the grip of the old identity and allows the new identity to settle fully into place. As the signal stabilizes, you will notice fewer swings between clarity and doubt. The emotional body becomes more even. The inner world feels less reactive. You begin to experience a grounded certainty, a quiet knowing that does not require validation. This is the mark of stabilization. The frequency holds itself because it has become your baseline. The new timeline emerges not because you fought to maintain the signal, but because you allowed the signal to become you. Old momentum is simply the residue of past identification. It is the lingering vibration of who you used to believe yourself to be. These patterns feel powerful, not because they are inherently strong, but because they have been rehearsed. They carry familiarity, and familiarity is often mistaken for truth. But momentum is not destiny. It is only repetition. And repetition can be overridden not through force, but through non-resistance and the quiet choice of a new identity. When you fight old momentum, you feed it. Combat implies that the old pattern has power over you, and that implication becomes part of your signal. The field reads the struggle and mirrors the struggle back. This is why pushing against an old emotional habit often makes it feel stronger. Resistance energizes it. The moment you decide something must be defeated, you make it real in your vibration, and the field responds accordingly. Overriding old momentum begins with recognition. You observe the familiar pattern without merging with it. You see the emotion, the thought, the tension as an echo of a former self, not as the voice of your current identity. This recognition weakens the pattern instantly because it removes your identification with it. Momentum cannot survive without identification. It needs you to believe that it is still who you are. The moment you see it as outdated, the grip loosens. Non-resistance is not passivity, it is clarity. It is the understanding that fighting the old reinforces it, while allowing it to be seen dissolves it. When a contracted emotion rises, you let it rise without labeling it as a setback. When an old belief appears, you let it appear without accepting it as truth. The energy moves through you instead of becoming you. This is how the old timeline loses strength, through the absence of attachment. As you release resistance, you create space for the new identity to take root. The new identity does not need to overpower the old. It simply needs room to settle. You give it that room through allowing, through calm, through recognition of its presence. Each time you choose the frequency of expansion instead of contraction, the new identity gains momentum. Each time you choose openness over defensiveness, the new timeline stabilizes, and the field responds to these shifts immediately, even before you see the results externally. Overriding old momentum is a process of replacing identification. You stop identifying with the thoughts that once defined you. You stop identifying with the emotions that once shaped your worldview. You stop identifying with the behaviors that once maintained your limitations. You choose again and again to inhabit the version of yourself who does not carry that past. As you do, the old vibrations fall away naturally because they no longer have a home in your identity. This process feels gentle, not rushed, not forced. It is the quiet dissolving of what no longer belongs to your frequency. Moments of contraction may still arise, but they do not pull you backward. They appear as reminders, as reflections of old momentum releasing. And when you meet them without resistance, the release accelerates. In time, the old patterns lose their emotional weight. They lose their authority. They become transparent, seen but no longer believed. This is how momentum shifts, not by battling the past, but by outgrowing it. Not by defeating the old identity, but by stepping fully into the new one. The field mirrors this shift with precision, aligning you with the timeline that matches who you have chosen to become. Non-attachment is not indifference, it is clarity. It is the state in which your desire remains pure because it is no longer tangled with fear, urgency, or the demand for a specific outcome. When you release attachment, you remove the interference that distorts your signal. The field can finally read your vibration without conflict. Attraction strengthens not because you care less, but because your frequency becomes clean. A clean signal is magnetic. A tangled signal is repelling. Attachment forms when you believe the desired experience will complete you or rescue you from an emotional state you fear. This belief creates pressure. Pressure contracts the emotional body, and contraction broadcasts lack. Even when the desire is genuine, the lack-based frequency dominates. The field does not receive the desire, it receives the contraction around it, and it reflects that contraction through delay, confusion, or outcomes that feel misaligned. The desire itself was never the issue, the grip around it was. When you release attachment, something powerful happens. Your emotional stance shifts from needing to choosing. Needing is constriction. Choosing is expansion. Needing says the desired timeline is distant and uncertain. Choosing says the timeline is already accessible and you are aligning with it. This shift changes the entire architecture of your signal. The field responds immediately because the broadcast becomes one of openness rather than grasping. Non-attachment does not mean giving up desire. It means allowing desire to exist without forcing it into form. It means you stop trying to control timing, method, and sequence. You stop demanding that reality move in a specific way. You no longer create from urgency. You create from alignment, and alignment carries its own momentum. When you release the need for control, you allow the natural flow of coherence to guide the unfolding. The result is movement without resistance. This release collapses interference. Interference was never external. It was internal contradiction. You desired one frequency while embodying another. You asked for expansion while transmitting fear. You attempted to accelerate timelines through force, not alignment. When attachment dissolves, so does contradiction. The emotional body relaxes. The identity becomes clearer. The signal stabilizes. And the field mirrors that stability through synchronicities, opportunities, and pathways that once seemed blocked. The magnetism of non-attachment emerges from this stability. When you are no longer gripping the outcome, your presence becomes more powerful. Your energy becomes more coherent. You become the version of yourself who is compatible with the reality you desire, not because you have demanded it, but because you have become aligned with it. Non-attachment makes you receptive. It opens the channel. It allows the field to move toward you because you are no longer pushing it away through tension. Paradoxically, you attract most strongly when you no longer chase. You receive most easily when you no longer doubt. You shift timelines most rapidly when you stop insisting that they shift. Non-attachment is not a technique, it is recognition. You recognize that the desired reality is not external and scarce, it is vibrational and present. You release the grip that once distorted your signal, and in that release, the magnetism emerges. When you rest in this clarity, attraction becomes effortless, not because the universe suddenly becomes generous, but because your frequency finally becomes unmistakable. Non-attachment is the state in which your signal is pure, your identity is aligned, and the field can respond without obstruction. In this state, what once seemed distant moves toward you with precision, because you are no longer pushing it away with your fear of losing it. There is a dimension of you that does not struggle, does not chase, does not attempt to manipulate outcomes. This dimension does not identify with thoughts or emotions, yet it perceives them with absolute clarity. It is the observer, the awareness that sits behind the personal self. When you rest in this awareness, you step out of the reactive patterns that once shaped your timeline unconsciously. You become the one who selects realities, not the one who is pushed around by them. The observer is not distant or abstract, it is the most intimate part of you. It is the silent space in which every thought arises and dissolves. When you identify with the observer, you stop becoming entangled in the emotional momentum of the small self. You notice contraction without collapsing into it. You witness desire without grasping at it. You experience thought without being defined by it. This witnessing alone alters your frequency. Because awareness carries no resistance, it is naturally expansive. From the observer state, timelines become options, not inevitabilities. You see clearly that every emotional reaction is a fork, every interpretation a selection, every moment of presence an entry point into a new vibrational reality. You are no longer the character attempting to force change from within a limited narrative. You are the consciousness that chooses which narrative to inhabit. This shift is subtle, but it is the foundation of mastery. The observer selects by resonance, not by effort. When you operate from the personal self, you attempt to control circumstances. You measure your progress by external markers. You push, pull, and negotiate with reality. But the observer does not move in this way. The observer simply feels the frequency of a timeline and aligns with it. There is no struggle in this alignment because the observer is not bound by the emotions that create conflict. Awareness is neutral, open, still. In stillness, the signal becomes unmistakable. As you become the observer, you begin to sense the difference between thought-driven intention and frequency-driven selection. Thought-driven intention feels tense, unstable, uncertain. It tries to predict and manage outcomes. Frequency-driven selection feels grounded, spacious, inevitable. It arises from a deeper knowing that the desired timeline already exists, and your role is simply to match it. The observer holds this knowing effortlessly because it is not clouded by fear or attachment. This perspective elevates you beyond the reactive mind. The observer sees emotion as guidance, not identity. It sees contrast as refinement, not threat. It sees synchronicity as reflection, not instruction. When you operate from this level, your timeline is shaped by clarity rather than habit. You choose expansion because expansion feels natural. You release contraction because contraction feels false. You move according to the frequency, not the fear. The more you rest in awareness, the less effort is required to shift realities. You select timelines through calm recognition. You feel the resonance of the version of yourself who already embodies the experience you desire. You let that resonance fill your emotional body, and the field mirrors that state with precision because the observer does not send mixed signals. Becoming the observer is not about detaching from life. It is about engaging with life from a higher vantage. You are no longer swept into the current of old momentum. You stand at the still point from which all timelines emerge. From here, you choose deliberately, peacefully, coherently, and reality adjusts itself to the clarity of that choice. There is a moment when the field shifts, and it is far quieter than the mind expects. It does not arrive with fireworks or sudden breakthroughs. It appears as a subtle inner click, a settling, a soft certainty that has no need for confirmation. This moment is the natural consequence of coherence. When your identity, emotion, and frequency align, The field responds instantly, but the response is felt first within you, not around you. The outer world follows, but the shift begins in the stillness of your inner state. The mind looks for signs. It looks for dramatic changes, unmistakable markers, external proof. But the field does not move dramatically. It moves precisely. It adjusts in ways that are subtle because they are vibrational. Before any physical evidence appears, the emotional body changes. You feel less tension around your desire. You feel less urgency. You feel a sense of inevitability that does not come from logic. It comes from resonance. This is the first sign that the field has shifted. The internal resistance dissolves. The moment the field shifts, the desire no longer feels distant. It feels familiar, as if you are remembering something rather than reaching for it. You are not excited in the way the mind defines excitement. You are steady, grounded, clear. You feel the alignment more than you think about it. The emotional stance that once required intention now arises naturally. This is coherence stabilizing, and it is the surest indicator that the timeline has begun to unfold. There may not be a single defining moment. Sometimes the shift appears as a realization. The old identity no longer feels believable. The old patterns no longer feel compelling. The old doubts feel transparent, as if you can see straight through them. This clarity is the field reorganizing your perception before reorganizing your circumstances. The inner world aligns first because perception shapes resonance, and resonance shapes timelines. You might notice external reflections soon after, small synchronicities, subtle openings, conversations that feel aligned, opportunities that appear without effort. But these are not the shift. They are the echo of it. The shift itself is internal. It is the moment you stop transmitting contradiction, the moment the emotional body stops sending mixed signals, the moment your identity matches your desire without strain. In that moment, the field can finally mirror you with precision. This inner click often feels like a release, a sense of spaciousness, a quiet confidence that does not need to be reinforced. Nothing feels forced. Nothing feels rushed. You sense movement beneath the surface even when nothing external has changed yet. The field rearranges silently because it always works at the frequency level first. Only when the new vibration stabilizes does the physical timeline begin to reflect it. The shift is not created by effort. It is revealed when effort dissolves. It emerges when you cease trying to make reality conform to your desires and instead become the version of yourself for whom those desires are natural. The moment you inhabit that identity, the field shifts because it has no choice. It mirrors the vibration you hold, and when that vibration is coherent, the reflection becomes inevitable. The true marker of the shift is the absence of grasping. You no longer feel the need to check, confirm, or verify. You know. You feel the alignment as a lived experience, not an aspiration. This knowing is the signal that the field has already rearranged. You are standing at the threshold of the new timeline, and the outer world is simply catching up. Embodying the hidden frequency is the moment everything you have learned becomes lived truth. It is the point where you no longer think about alignment, coherence, or resonance because these states have become natural expressions of your identity. Embodiment is not a technique, it is a presence. It is the quiet realization that the frequency which shifts timelines is not something you generate. It is something you allow to flow through you when you stop resisting who you truly are. The hidden frequency has always been the signal beneath your thoughts, beneath your desires, beneath every moment of contrast or clarity. It is the vibration of your expanded self, the self that does not chase timelines, but selects them through its very state of being. When you embody this frequency, creation stops feeling like a task. It becomes a byproduct of the identity you hold. You no longer attempt to shape reality from the outside. You harmonize with it from within. Embodying the frequency means that your emotional body no longer oscillates between contraction and expansion with the same intensity. You feel contractions arise, but you do not merge with them. You feel expansions arise, and you allow them to guide you. You remain centered in the knowing that every emotion is information, every moment is feedback, and every shift within you is mirrored by the field with absolute precision. This is the maturity of the path. Nothing external defines your state defines your reality. As you embody the hidden frequency, the past loses its gravitational pull. Old identities feel distant, almost unreal. Old patterns lose their coherence because you are no longer feeding them with belief or attention. You become anchored in the present moment, not because of discipline, but because the present is where your frequency feels strongest. You stop projecting yourself into imagined futures or revisiting remembered pasts. You exist in the vibrational now, where creation is immediate. This embodiment brings a sense of calm power. It is not loud. It is not performative. It is a grounded certainty that does not require explanation. You feel aligned with the field because you recognize yourself as part of it. You sense the unity between your internal signal and the external reflections. You no longer interpret synchronicities as anomalies. You see them as natural expressions of your coherence. You no longer seek validation because the clarity within you is validation enough. Embodying the hidden frequency means you are no longer waiting for reality to shift. You sense the shift within you, and you trust the outer world to reflect it in its own timing. You know that resistance delays nothing, and fear accelerates nothing. You move through your timeline with an open heart, a relaxed body, and a steady emotional tone. This steadiness is your power. It is the magnetic field through which new realities form effortlessly. In this state, desire becomes guidance rather than longing. Action becomes expression rather than effort. Presence becomes creation rather than observation. You realize that the hidden frequency was never hidden at all. It was simply obscured by old identities, old momentum, and old beliefs. Now that these have dissolved, the frequency shines clearly through you. Embodying the hidden frequency is the final step because it is the beginning of everything. When you hold this vibration as your baseline, you no longer shift timelines intentionally. You shift them naturally, automatically, continuously. Your life becomes an unfolding of resonance, and you become the conscious presence that shapes reality by being, not by trying.